Welcome to Hop Psychology, and I'm Nick Agler, and this is
I'm Chris Ostrander.
Chris Ostrander.
Yeah.
We're both mental health professionals, but we're really different than your average.
Yes, we're very different.
We're better than
We're edgy.
that's
We're
right.
edgy mental health professionals.
Edgy mental health professionals.
We're not your average therapists.
And edgy means something completely different. Whoever you talk to these days,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What was conservative 10 years ago is now edgy now,
Right.
and what was edgy,
Yeah. So therapists drinking beer. I mean,
yeah, well,
I suppose that'd be edgy to some people.
we swear. Yeah,
This is not a family show.
it's not a family show. We should start out with our disclaimer, which we're going to try to do at the beginning. Would you want to read it?
No, I thought we were gonna just kind of flash it on the screen.
Well, let's just say it for the record. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute professional advice, even though we are professionals
Of some sort.
of some sort. And I don't know, professional just means you get paid to do something, right?
Yeah. Or have a license like we do.
Yeah.
For now.
This podcast is produced for entertainment purposes only.
All right.
So, I guess, what we were going to talk about. We want to talk about who we are. Do you want to talk about life experience, or do you want to just...
Yeah, with our jobs, I don't know how much we can talk about that. We probably got to keep it pretty
Secret.
minimal.
Secret jobs. We have jobs in corrections.
Yeah.
I could speak personally. I've been working in with this population for a while. Starting out about... Is that the cat? There's a cat that might
I
be...
think it might be your wife.
They're both up to no good. But yeah, I started out back in the late 90s working residential programs, teenage kids with substance abuse issues. Went into juvenile detention, got a master's degree, went into home-based therapy, worked as a school social worker for a little bit, went back, was running a juvenile detention for a minute, and now I'm someplace continuing to work in the criminal justice system in the mental health capacity.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's me.
I have a pretty, crazy background. Well, I mean, when I started going to school, I was working in healthcare, and I wanted to work in surgery, and that didn't work out. Completed the degree, but never worked in the field. And but I actually started my career usually where people are trying to end up at, which was working on a multi-million-dollar federally funded program that was expanding trauma-informed care into Kent County, and also getting a type of therapy called Seeking Safety going as well. And I was on the evaluation team. So we were analyzing data, writing reports on a quarterly basis, and then writing annual reports for that. And we had some other grants as well that we were evaluating. But I wanted to go clinical, so I ended up leaving that position and working in basically in the community with extremely mentally ill individuals. So kind of I don't know. It was a big change from working in this nice office setting to being out in the streets with homeless people. But it was good. It's a good experience. And then from there, I got a job in the correction system and started that, and also did some private practice. Worked at a psych hospital doing admissions, and just kind of as extra side hustles, while I did that. But now I'm just doing this. So yeah.
Yeah.
And it's good.
We're qualified.
It's good work.
It is good work. It's meaningful work, and that's one of the things that I've talked about a lot is being able to have a job that not only provides income but provides meaning and purpose.
Right.
And a lot of people don't have that.
Yeah.
And I use that example a lot of the Hollywood people who go over to Africa and adopt a bunch of kids, even though seemingly they have everything, all the status, all the money they could ever want. They don't have purpose. Somehow, I guess, pretending to be somebody who had a positive impact on the world isn't enough. Sorry.
But no, I have a friend who works in sales, and he makes probably significantly more money than I do. I know he makes significantly more money than I do, but if you asked him, he kind of views his job as just like, yeah, it's a good income, but that's about it. It doesn't really, it's not a work he finds particularly meaningful, especially with his interests and whatnot. So yeah, it's a good balance, between, having, even though we may always not feel that way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the idea is, your idea of what progress is, it changes significantly. Hobbs is crying upstairs. You can probably hear him. Hobbs is our new kitten, and he was terrorizing us. We wanted to keep him down here. We wanted to make him a part of the experience. He just couldn't handle it.
No.
And we tried to de-escalate him, and it didn't work. But where was I? Yeah, I mean, what was I getting to? Crap. I guess I could review it.
Yeah, we were talking about meaning in your work, and
I was talking about just the idea of meaning and progress. And I think that's one of the big things that I learned, and I've been saying a lot, and I say that to anybody who's starting out in the field, that you're not responsible for other people's success or their failure.
Oh yeah.
But I used to, your supervisors and the bleeding heart mentality will tell you, you don't give up, you keep pushing and giving, and I was starting to really suffer because of that. And I was, in a way, doing more harm than good, trying to push myself and my idea of helping this person to somebody who just didn't want it. So
it's interesting in grad school. I when I was kind of going through my internship, I had some experienced kind of veteran therapists and case managers telling me, well, you only put as much work in as your client is willing to put in. If they're not willing to put in the work, why are you putting in all this work? And then on the other hand, this is in motivational interviewing was really getting pushed hard, and motivational interviewing is a type of conversing with someone in order to motivate them, kind of nudge them in the direction of change. And so what I was always told was, no, don't think of it that way. It's not that if your client doesn't seem to be putting in the work, then you should resort to motivational interviewing. That's what you need to be doing with them the entire time then, So I don't know. I kind of go back and forth between that feeling of, well, you can't force people to change, and if you're just stuck in this place of either denial or just not wanting to do anything, just saying like, okay, well, I'll continue to see you, but I gotta wait for you, and feeling like, oh no, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I should be asking more open-ended questions, or I should be,
and
doing more reflective listening. I should be looking for change talk.
Some of that. I mean, some of that, there's a place for it. But I think when you establish, with a lot of the populations, at least that I've worked with in the past, there is this, and it probably comes from the family of origin and parenting, where there is a blame that's placed on you for a lack of progress. Nothing we're doing is working, or you've been working with my kid for however long and nothing has changed. And so I try to, and I've said this to you before, but I try to set it up from the beginning when I tell them, look, I am a resource, I'm a tool to be used. I'm not responsible for your success or your failure. I could give you the best therapeutic advice in the world. You could get the best medication.
Yep.
But unless you're the one driving this, unless you're the one who's motivated to do this, none of that's going to be of any use. And so, if you get to a point where it's like, I used the resources, I used the tools that were available to me, and I'm successful, good for you. You did that. I didn't do that. I'm just doing my job. If you failed, okay, well, you made that choice to do that. And it gives them whatever. I could get into all the things that we know, but the idea of control. You have control over your environment now. So this is your choice. And so in some ways, they don't get to blame someone else, but they also get the benefit of having control over their life and their destiny and all that other crap. And so when those conversations come up, since I started doing it, I don't even have those conversations that it's your fault or nothing's working. For the times that does happen, I go, look, I told you the first day, this is your thing. What are you doing? And it's been pretty successful. But again, getting back to where we first started this, the idea of success, that you get a fine-tuned sense of progress and recognizing that maybe those incremental movements.
Yep, a lot of it is incremental.
So,
which that's most of life. It's rare that you have those big transformative moments, or most of it is it's a slow process. So
it's work. It took 25 years for you to develop in this way of doing things. Oh, I couldn't do it. I tried breathing exercises for a week, and none of it worked. I did everything you said.
Yep, I just always resort to my P90X line. Well, if you started using P90X for a week and you were 300 pounds and you're trying to lose 100 pounds and you didn't lose it within that week or even lose much, would you say, oh, I guess this program doesn't work? Of course not. Because it's something you got to continue to do. You've got to do work, right? It's not sit and just watch P90X and then just like, oh, I absorbed it into my mind and now it's like everything's better. Of course not. It's things you have to do, That's why we try to give homework. Not all of us do, but
I can't do a 180 grind on a half pipe. These wheels suck. It's your fault. This board is a piece of shit.
Right.
Yeah, I don't even know if that's a real trick. But.
No, the point is like changing your brain, which is kind of what we're trying to do in therapy. You're essentially trying to rewire your brain. You're trying to dig into these old patterns that are well worn. These neural pathways that have been there for a long time, and you've been using for a long time. You're trying to forge new ones, and I mean it's just like building muscle. It's something you got to continue to work at. And I mean most of us don't want to do that. We want pills, right? Which there's a role for that. So.
Well, and that's my big old speech about the American way, right?
Yeah.
The get-rich-quick scheme, right? We
were just talking about this.
The fad diet. I don't want to discipline my kid. I want to just put him on medication, and I don't want to discipline myself to like go to bed at a certain time or get off my phone or do everything else. And so, I said this many times. Disciplined kids have disciplined parents, but we don't want to do that. We want to, and podcasting is a perfect example. I'm just gonna get a microphone, and unfortunately that works sometimes. But
I'm gonna say some brilliant things, or I'm gonna start playing a game online, and
have a catchphrase.
Everyone's gonna flock to my site, and all I got to do is play video games all day, and I'll be rich. That's what my kids think.
Yeah. What's the new rock and roll? Star, right? Everyone wanted to be a rock star when I was growing up. You hear it?
Yeah, well, a YouTuber. I mean, that's what people want to be. They want to be YouTubers. Or they want to be, streamers. So
I'm so out of touch with
that. Is your kids, they're not old enough yet, but it'll happen.
I can't wait.
Your son will at some point be like, I'm going to be a streamer.
But for me, it was
I don't even need to go to college.
Yeah. And like I said, the sad thing is, and maybe they're right. But that's a whole nother subject. The necessity of college.
Yeah.
But yeah, like in the juvenile detention, it was I want to be a rapper or I want to be a ball player in some way or another. And that, is a lack of options, I think, for some of the kids. But we've all got these things. And, and I feel like in some way I'm still clinging to some of those, with music and everything else. I was talking to a friend of mine who's, kind of had the same path musically and whatever. And it's like, man, when I was down here playing guitar or playing drums, my son was playing guitar. It was like that was a magical moment. Not getting up in front of a bunch of people and like having a name and getting attention. It was like
that'd be nice too, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't know. There's this, but my point is we dump so much energy into these whatever it means to get our needs met, whatever that is, whether that's music and you get attention, or, and I don't know. It's not always the most powerful thing. I don't know, but anyway. Now, what should we talk about? You want to talk about?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're going to talk about it's the new year.
Yes.
Yeah.
The new year.
The new year. And
the ball has dropped. I dropped the ball.
Do you have a resolution? I dropped the ball.
Again, yeah,
I started the new year by dropping the ball.
Isn't that like the symbolism, right? The symbolism of we start this new year by dropping the ball, right? And so we fucked it up right out of the gate. It can't get any worse. We already dropped the ball.
Just do it now. Get it over with.
So
rest of the year will be trying to get our shit back together.
This right here is my New Year's resolution. You and I are finally getting around to doing.
Yeah.
And yeah. I mean,
that's a good resolution. I don't typically do resolutions just because, probably because I feel kind of hopeless about them, like, right? Because what are the statistics? I don't even know what they are, but I'm sure it's pretty low that people keep their resolutions. So it's kind of just, if I'm going to work on something, it should be something I'm going to do year round and not something I'm going to.
Sure.
But
it's a new reset, though. I mean,
it is a reset.
It's one of those significant, markers.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, and maybe that's just I drank too damn much last night, and that's another marker. And I think about, like it's not so much like, I don't know, it's just how quick you can get back into it. And I like to think I'm getting faster at getting back up and getting motivated.
I think what I do, though, at the beginning of the new year is I kind of have almost like a vision of the type of person I want to work on becoming, maybe, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you have a vision of the person that you want.
It's not necessarily a specific resolution. It's just like, okay, this year I want, to. Yeah, every year I'm always like, oh, I want to, you do all my vices less, right? Whether it's drinking or whatever, exercise more, those sorts of things. But it's not like I'm sitting there going like, okay, I'm going to, this year I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. It's always kind of, now this is the beginning of me again trying to self-improve on multiple areas. Because the holidays, I mean, let's face it, at least for me, it's like the holidays
just about excess, right?
It turns into gluttony. It turns into gluttony and drinking too much, and it's about excess.
I don't need this, but I have to buy something I don't need. I have to eat something I don't need. I got to drink something I don't need. I got to see people I don't want to.
It's like a several month-long Mardi Gras almost, like where you're just, screw it, going to parties and and you're just like, whatever. And then you go, when the new year starts, I'm going to just, I'm going to live it up right now. And when the new year starts, then that's probably where resolutions even come from. Who knows? I should, that'd be interesting.
It's a pretty big run of gluttony if you take it back to like, if you start your run
like October or something.
Oktoberfest. Halloween.
Yeah, both of us are big beer people, so yeah.
Oh, campfires and beer. And then we move into Thanksgiving, and what's the primary reason of Thanksgiving?
It's a day of gluttony and football.
Turkey and sitting on your
And watching
duff. And,
football. Yep.
oh, now we have to go into Christmas.
Yep.
And New Year's, we have to celebrate that too, but then we're depressed during the winter because it's so dark and
Yep.
cold.
Yeah,
and
especially well, if
what
you
can
live in
you
Michigan,
do?
at least. Yeah.
I could go sledding in
Mm-hmm.
10-degree weather.
You're good at that, though. You like the winter sports, and it's kind of your
kids
thing.
get you into those things, but it's expensive too. Though,
Yeah.
so, but no, it takes a lot, man.
Mm-hmm.
Taking little kids skiing, teaching little kids how to ski.
Yeah.
Dude, I ran up and down the rope toe hill with
Yeah, I
my
remember you telling
kids.
me that,
Like,
yeah.
you can do it, you can do it. And yeah, so
Probably
I got to
met
work
your
out.
New Year's resolution for your weight
Yeah, well,
that day.
the problem is I'm so hit or miss with those, like, these huge bursts of physical activity. One of these days, my body's going to be like, dude,
You're just gonna have a massive heart attack.
that's it, man. Well, you got to warm me up for these things. That's the voice of my body, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing every year. I try to do like a dry-ish January. And this is something I've been kind of going over in my head. Like, why does it have to be dry-ish? Why can't it just be dry January? Why do I feel the need to kind of give myself that little bit of wiggle room? And and for me, I think it's just I'm not an all or nothing type person. I'm a very everything has its place. Everything's kind of in balance. I think that's a more kind of healthier way to live. So I think that's a piece of it. But then, I hear those people out there who might say like, well, if you can't just do dry January, then, I mean, doesn't that mean you have some sort of problem?
yeah.
And my response to that would be, well, no, I think a problem with alcohol, I mean, would look like certain things, right? Like you're not going to work, maybe because you're hungover every day, like other people we've known in the past.
And that's the question, right?
Your health's failing, and your doctor's like, you need to, and you can't do it, or it's affecting your relationships, or it's affecting your financial situation. Right? Like it shows up in whether it's your relationships or your job or whatever.
And if you don't see it, someone else is going to eventually tell you about it.
It is funny because I've been thinking about like how I started. I don't want to say drinking as much as I do because that makes it sound like I'm. It sounds like I'm an alcoholic, but I remember back in my early 30s.
That's your second beer, isn't it? And then I'm just saying.
Thanks.
I'm just saying. Let's toast to sober January.
Dry January.
Dry-ish January.
Yeah. No.
It's a light beer.
No, what I mean by dry-ish January is like Monday through essentially Thursday, just nothing. And then, Friday, maybe have like one.
Sure.
And then the weekend, like if I drink, it's like, it's really, really minimal. Right.
So like, how do you know? I mean, obviously something prompted this, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you know when there's an issue for you? Like, what is your limit to like, because for some people it's, I got in a drunk driving accident.
Yeah.
I gave my wife
I mean,
a
for me,
concussion.
it's if I get hungover, it's always by accident.
Mm-hmm.
It's never something I intentionally did. I have this just, it's bizarre. I mean, it really, and of course, it probably depends on how I metabolize and what I've eaten and stuff. I mean, I can have times where I'll drink like a few drinks and then the next day I've got like a splitting headache and I'm like, what the heck? I barely did anything, right? But no, I haven't had a moment in a long time where I've actually thought like, geez, do I have a problem with this? Mm-hmm. But when I did, that was like several summers ago. And I had a couple times where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't remember. Mm-hmm. Like I blacked out for a couple hours, right? Yeah. And then fell asleep and then woke up and it's like, geez, I've got to rein this in. So yeah, but that would be it. I mean, I've never had a DUI or anything like that. I've never It doesn't affect my relationships. If I do get a little, have a little bit too much to drink, I get talkative and then I get tired. That's what happens to me. It's not like I get angry or I don't get, I don't lose control of myself. So
yeah, and I get more jolly.
Yeah.
If that's the
more
case.
gregarious,
More like
and
I
more
guess a little
talkative,
stupider, but whatever. Yeah, but yeah, I guess for me it's usually just that I start feeling like shit.
Yeah.
Like physically, I'm like, man, I don't have energy. I don't. So I mean, and then I'm like, all right, I gotta. And I think I'm sensitive to alcohol. I think that maybe what the appeal is to me is that you hear about Native Americans with an alcohol allergy and that sort of thing, and I think, a little more chemically sensitive.
That's interesting. I had a friend who dated a girl from Thailand, and this has triggered this thought. And she, I didn't know this at the time, but she went out with my girlfriend and I. He was working at the time, and he was kind of like, "Hey, can you entertain her?" Because she was kind of visiting us. And I'm sure, yeah. So we went out, and she had a couple drinks, and she was gone. And it's like I had no idea, but I guess people from Thailand, I don't, want to completely stereotype everyone there, but I guess having some sort of allergy to alcohol is a thing there.
Yeah.
And of course, Native Americans, essentially come from Asia, I think.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe that could be a genetic thing too. I don't know.
But that's something I always hit on too. I feel like I'm just like throwing everything I know out there today, but like the idea of my weakness in my life having saved me from a lifetime of just destructive stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like early on,
sure.
I've never been the type of guy who could like binge for like a week, just like kill it all the time. My body would eventually be like, dude, you can't do this.
Or when people talk about like staying up till 4 a.m. partying when they're in college, and then they have to be to class the next day at 8 a.m. and do an exam. It's like, hell no, that would not work for me at all.
Yeah, you have though.
I would I wouldn't be in class. Like I would just be done.
Yeah.
Right. Because if I get hungover, I'm wiped out for the whole day.
So because we're big
it's
pussies, right?
I guess. Or we haven't pushed ourselves. Maybe that's it. We didn't push ourselves enough. And
I've pushed.
Develop that tolerance.
I've been there.
Tried.
I guess, but it's just one of those things where I guess I can't hack it for long. But I know people with those constitutions that, dude, it's like, okay, you guys are in your 40s.
Right.
And you're still doing this stuff every night. Everything's a party. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Dude, at what point do you... But that's it. Yeah. Those are the people that end up drinking themselves to death and dying in their 50s or whatever.
Yep. Or, something happens, they get a divorce or lose their job or something like that. And they're just, just... They drink, it becomes a real problem then. Something tragic happens or something, like that. It's interesting though, because I was thinking about this conversation earlier today, and I started kind of drinking on a regular basis back in my early 30s, and one of the reasons why, and this shows you kind of how like a nerd I can be, is the government and like the kind of standard thing that I think the CDC or whomever is in control of that information says, or in general, is, men can have about 3 drinks a day and they're fine. Women about 2. It's good. And a drink can be either, liquor or wine or beer or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But about 3 a day, and that's about good for men. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I guess I can have like 2 to 3 drinks a day. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, well,
and today, I think it came out today or yesterday. I can't remember, but really recent. Now the Surgeon General is saying that any amount of alcohol is linked to cancer, and you shouldn't drink any alcohol, right? So it's kind of like,
but thanks for what else is linked to cancer is
everything.
Just dealing with your fucking stress.
Everything is linked to cancer, but
and So, holding in your farts is probably linked to cancer.
You have to slip in farts.
It's classic. It's a classic Fart.
But
Go ahead, look at me.
but yeah,
Try not
it's-
to laugh when I say the word fart. Ready? Fart. I don't believe it.
I'm really good at this.
You probably hold in your farts too.
Oh man, in high school we'd play these like try not to laugh challenges.
Yeah.
And like everybody get in a big circle and then
Yeah.
someone would get picked and then they'd have to walk up to someone and start like trying to make them laugh and you know, and when
Yeah.
they finally did, when they finally broke, then it'd be their turn.
There's
I'm
can't
just
be,
unbreakable. you know,
there's that
because
I
of that.
can't be tickled thing, which I won't try on. you.
Oh, that yeah. Please don't.
But
That's different.
but no, like
I'm sure
I was
it
like
was.
that. It's like no, I won't.
But so anyway, I just think it's funny that we're having this conversation today. That was when I think back to like when did I start kind of drinking on a regular basis, and that was it. It was kind of in my early 30s, and literally the reason is because I thought like, oh, this isn't a big deal if you have a few drinks a day, and now, frickin' Surgeon General and all these other studies are saying any alcohol is detrimental to your health. I mean, they used to say, oh, drink a glass of wine a day, you'll actually probably live longer. But you know, genetics are always a huge component of it, though.
Well, yeah, and
You got people who drink,
millions
get
of other
drunk almost
things.
every day, and they live to be like 85.
Sure, yeah.
So
Well, yeah, everything that we're ingesting is fairly poisonous, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the addiction, right? It's just we talked about that before, like, and there's all these like sinful ways of doing things, but if we really want to take a look, an honest look, I mean, all these cheeseburgers that you're eating, like it's all addictive fucking
Sure.
poison.
Sure.
You know, and so sedentary stuff and
Yep.
it's all and they keep us there, like you know, the enemy keeps us there, like on our duffs consuming
Who's
fast food.
the enemy?
Yeah, well, yeah, the corporate enemy, whatever you want
gotcha,
to call it.
Gotcha. I thought you were talking about Satan. Like,
Well,
I suppose
same
it's kind of the same
thing.
thing.
But
Yeah.
But I don't know. But yeah, I just I think about what we think is acceptable and what's not, and I don't know. But and what will you say 3 beers? But a beer today looks different potentially than it did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
A joint looks different
Mm-hmm.
than it did,
Yeah.
20 years ago. I don't know. Like but then there's the other idea that like we were talking about.
Meaning they're more potent?
Yeah, they're more potent.
I mean, beer, well, I mean, it depends on what you're drinking, obviously.
But then some people too, I mean, with all the sugar that's in it,
Yeah.
but then some people too have a sensitivity to those things. And it's just like the same thing with like smoking weed. Like, you know, okay, for some person, no big deal. But for others, it's
Right.
pretty significant.
They have panic attacks.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's me. Okay. So we were talking about New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
And excuse me. And so how do you start any kind of change?
Yeah.
Why change, right? And so it leads us into that question of how do we become aware of these things? And awareness, right, is where you start. You have to see your problem before you can do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to see it accurately,
Mm-hmm.
objectively.
Mm-hmm. Well, or as much as you can, accurately and objectively. I mean, can we really objectively, you know what I'm saying?
No, I get you. There's got to be a level, though, of
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think there's...
to say, hey, I kind of suck
Yeah.
is...
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean,
Uh-huh.
that's objectivity.
Yeah.
I kind of suck.
Yep.
So
Right.
I'm not great. So that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a couple frameworks you can use to become more aware, and because you might think of like, well, become aware of what? There's so many things to become aware of. Like, where do you even start? Like, how do you even put this into, some sort of structure? And of course, one way is the biopsychosocial model. That as therapists, we're taught, we have this drilled into our head from undergrad. And but it's a good framework, because it kind of covers everything.
Well, I think taking a step back, though, I mean, seeing, I guess, seeing what you we talked about this with the groups that we were running, like what the quickest way to find out where your issue is to identify the things in your life that cause the most problems.
Yeah.
And then from there, like you're saying,
Right.
applying the psychosocial awareness of your issues. And so anyway.
No. So yeah, of course you have to be aware of what you want to change. You have to be aware of what your problems are. You have to be, you have to look at your life and say, well, something's not working. And then you come to the point where you're saying like, okay, this is what it is that's not working. So yeah. So then what we're talking about is what's the first step in saying, okay, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to change this about myself. And so why the biopsychosocial model makes sense is because, like I said, it kind of encompasses everything, but it kind of breaks things up in a nice, 3 categories that you can make sense of things.
And some people
helps you make sense of things.
Some people add the spiritual to
Sure.
to I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah,
But
that's definitely an important piece, I think.
break it down.
But your biology. So I think of myself. We're discussing alcohol. And, I do have alcoholism in my family. My grandfather was an alcoholic, kind of the typical 1950s, 60s, nuclear family setting, the dad who works, the typical 9-to-5 job and then goes to the bars at night, hangs out with his buddies and comes home drunk and that sort of life, and was, there's definitely some abuse there and stuff, but so I mean, I know I have that, like that genetic piece, and that's kind of what the biological is partially about. It's about what's your family history, what's your genes look like. I mean, you can do testing and stuff too. I don't know if you ever dealt with this, but you can get like genetic testing for psych medications.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that a little bit.
Because, everyone's genes kind of, we come into the world kind of pre-programmed.
Yeah.
There used to be this idea that, and I don't know why people thought this way, but, whatever, that you come in with a blank slate. And it's like, well, how can that even be? We know that we're given
life makes sense
kind
this
of
way.
This, like I said, this genetic pre-programming straight out the gates. Straight out the gates, you're going to have things that you're going to fear more than others, right? I'm afraid of heights. Most of the time I'm fine, but if you put me on something where I'm like dangling like a ski, like one of those when you go skiing and you go up the hill on the little, what I'm talking about, hanging from the cable, what are they called? Ski lift? Chairlift. Yeah. Those freak me out, man.
Yeah, they freak out most people. I think it's
no, I don't.
Dude, I mean, you're in a chair with nothing in front of you. Some have the bars, but
okay.
I
feel like most people are good with it. Most people can be like,
I don't think
this is
I
nice and relaxing.
I don't think right out of the gate they are. Okay. They have to have some.
You kind of got to work on it.
And maybe this isn't a good segue, but I was just thinking about like where do you think this idea came up that like everybody is kind of comes into it with the same thing? Because in a lot of ways, in people's cultures, the things you hear people say, the sayings that are in, our language, they suggest otherwise, but yet there's this idea that, hey, we're all kind of coming into it with the same stuff.
Yeah. Not really true.
No, it's not. But yeah, that's a bitch for a later day, I guess. But I don't know what you think about that.
No. I mean, obviously, like I said, I think we come in genetically pre-programmed.
Yeah, I'm just curious what your thoughts were about like how we got to that place where there's
how we got to what place?
The place of everybody just assuming we all have the same starting line. We're all made of it. We're all equal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of. To a certain extent, I think it's kind of part of how Americans typically think.
Yeah,
we're all just like the idea of a meritocracy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like we have a system just based on merit. You work hard,
yeah,
and it's all equal. And anybody, it's like that's nonsense.
Yeah.
That's complete nonsense. It's not. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but you come in with good things and bad things, right? You come in with fears. You come in with sometimes genetic issues, like whether it's like heart deformities or whatever, skin issues, or that's another wonderful thing I inherited from my parents is skin issues. So, but there's also good things as well, right? Talents and stuff, and if whatever people are
there might be
born.
a positive
Some people are
side
born
to
more
it.
intelligent than others. Like, let's be real. Like, intelligence is partially a genetic thing.
What?
Yeah, that's true.
Nobody is smarter than anybody else.
Just like some people are born physically more athletic than other people, right? So, genetics is huge.
That was a conversation with my brother.
Oh, I know.
Jumping,
Oh, my
like
goodness.
if
It's like,
all-
no, dude,
if
you
I
are
could-
like 48 years old. You could not you could not go to a training camp and become an NBA player.
Yeah, it's not.
No matter how hard you worked, you wouldn't do it. Number one, because you're too old. But number two, because you're just not physically,
Yeah, you don't have
You're
the
not-
stuff.
you're not pre-programmed for it. But yeah, so that's the bio end of it, right? Which is a huge piece, because I do think genetics play a huge role in who we are.
Absolutely.
I always use the example of my grandparents. Like my grandpa, who was an alcoholic for a long period of time in his life, also ate whatever he wanted, most of his life, and died at the age of 93. So he did not live a lifestyle for longevity. Let's just put it that way. But he was just that's what his body had
He
in him.
ate what he wanted
Yeah,
within
exactly,
the
yeah.
limits of the law.
Yeah, he had like a
It's-
triple bypass when I was in I was like in middle school. Yeah, and he didn't think he was going to live that long, but he did.
How
So
about that?
so yeah, I mean it's
Yeah.
so much of it is genes. But so then the psychological realm, of course, is about what's going on in your mind, what's going on in your brain, what are your thought patterns, right? And this is what cognitive behavioral therapy is kind of all about. It kind
And I
of-
think that's the most invisible
Mhm.
thing.
Yep.
And we could get into how those things are normalized and how what you come into the game with, whether that's biologically or socially, is all you know. And so, yeah, it's normal.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you don't see it. I use that example a lot about how different families, if I asked 3 guys what a whooping was, right?
Okay.
And I'm going to get 3 completely different stories. And so sometimes, my wife is really good at being able to tactfully kind of point out how my culture is a little different from my family. And,
Yeah. Your family culture.
yeah, and my family culture. And so, but yeah, I mean, anxiety, we can get into all that stuff, but it's a lot of it's invisible because it's your norm, it's your baseline. So
We were talking about the whooping. So what are some examples? Like, what do you mean? Like,
I mean, just, a spanking with your hand to a straight up just brutal fucking assault, right? I mean,
right.
that's
Okay,
a-
I see what you're
that's a
saying.
whooping.
Yeah.
I lost a tooth. Thrown down
From a whooping.
thrown down the stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
And of course, if you grow up that way, you have no idea that you're being abused.
and it's the norm. It's like, well, and I hear a lot of people just say, well, I deserved it.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality there. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the psychological piece is huge. Because, like you're kind of saying, like, we're so unaware of what's going on in our mind.
Yeah.
It's just all below this. It's like below the surface, and it's not that we can't have access to it, but it's just you got to start paying attention to it. And that's a lot of what therapy, at least therapy I do, ends up being is trying to discover those thought patterns, discover those, whether they're images or whatever that pop into one's head even briefly, that then triggers emotional responses. And yeah, like I said, so much of it is just
It's reflexive. It's just
it is,
Yeah.
yeah. Because it's sometimes it's so quick. It's like it happens simultaneously.
Yeah.
The thought and the emotion just boom boom.
Yep.
Like And
yeah,
so
the longer it's been
you don't
reinforced,
even
right?
exactly, and you
Yeah.
don't even notice the thought anymore. All you do is have the emotion.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, a huge piece of change is figuring that out, is figuring your thought patterns out, and learning, yeah, learning how you're distorting the world in unhelpful ways. And then the social aspect, of course, is everything from how you're raised, and the family you grew up in, the kind of just typical the crap that's just passed down socially,
Sure.
like how
Yeah.
what a whooping is to
A
you.
religious
Yeah.
ideology.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's of course a huge piece of it.
Uh,
Religion, and where you
poverty, right?
Yeah,
I
where you
mean,
grew. I was gonna say where you grew up.
yeah. Addiction,
Mm-hmm. People have no idea how poverty affects somebody.
or wealth.
Well, that's true too.
Right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some guys when I was working in different areas, the kids that were more affluent. I mean, they have a whole different flavor
Yeah.
of. I'll take a look at some of our more recent political leaders and the issues the baggage they're holding on to from daddy, who never loved me and was more concerned and valued financial success over everything.
Yeah, it's interesting how we talk a lot about like the fatherless families of like African American communities, specifically that that gets pointed out, and the lack of the father and whatnot. But sometimes on the other end of the spectrum, you see a lot of daddy issues with
Sure.
young men who grew up wealthy with these like high these workaholic fathers who are very high functioning, and it's like, oh my gosh, I gotta work, I have to be that.
Yeah.
And it's like either they work themselves to death to be daddy's special boy,
Yeah.
or they say fuck it, this is too hard, and they just they're Billy Madison.
Shoot.
And they're talking to psychedelic penguins or whatever.
Just walking around.
So yeah, that's interesting. The role of dads.
Well,
in
and
kids' lives.
it makes me think too. Like I hear people, if they've been adopted, a lot of times I'll hear people, often when they're making that equality statement, right? We all have the same opportunities in this world, and they'll say, well, I was adopted. I lost my family. It's like, well, thank God, because if you were to stay in that family, where might you be?
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, the opportunity or the help you received got you out of that destructive environment. So,
yeah,
that was your first, handout, I guess.
Yeah. It's like pick your trauma. Yeah. Your family of origin, which is going to be,
and the systems are pushed towards
or
that, right? And
or the trauma of adoption.
Yeah. Which, depending on how old you are, I mean, I don't want to get into that.
I think even like as if you were raised from a baby, I mean, just knowing.
Well, sure, that's gonna be there, but after age 4,
right,
when the damage is done, I've seen so many people trying to navigate that whole thing with the kid that's got rad or whatever.
Yeah,
it's like, dude, you're just gonna struggle. There's no way around it. As a parent with this kid, you signed up, and hopefully the adoption agencies are very clear about what to expect. This is what you're getting into.
Yeah. And
I'm
always pretty impressed by people who choose to do that, whether it's fostering or adopting. That would it would scare the crap out of me being adopted or fostered. And it also would scare the crap out of me, like taking in a brand new kid. Like, oh my gosh, what's this kid been through, and how are they gonna react to my family, and what.
Yeah, I want to clarify in case people didn't. I'm not saying that all adoption,
no,
are helpless and hopeless and crazy, but there are some situations where it's like there's not a whole lot you can do aside from damage control with this situation.
Harm reduction.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of it is. I mean, harm reduction, but So we talked about biopsychosocial, and then the other framework I think is helpful is thinking about your relationships. And you have three main relationships, I think. So yeah, we have relationship with ourself, relationship with other people, and then relationship with just kind of how you perceive your relationship with the world in general. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on those relationships?
With yourself, how you see
Yeah.
the world. What was the other one?
Relationship with other people.
The world and other people. I guess. Well, I mean, yeah, it's a world and the other people. There's a lot of, I guess, overlap.
Yeah, like your interpersonal relationships, and then how the world overall.
Yeah, I mean, they manifest. I guess they want to keep it like locked into
Mm-hmm.
that biopsychosocial and yeah, how you navigate the world. Yeah, I don't know. Physically, psychologically, yeah, I mean, all these different things impact those areas of your life.
Yeah.
And all those areas of your life impact you, right? It's like a
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a dialectic, right?
yeah,
It's this
yeah.
thing that's doing that.
Like
but
art.
like
Like art.
like everything.
That's a reflection.
Like everything.
But yeah.
So relationship with yourself, I mean, this is kind of, I think, where maybe society at large has maybe gone too much to one side of the spectrum, because the what do you think about when you think about your relationship with yourself and the message that society's gives
Well,
you?
a lot of what I
It's
hear
the-
is you're not supposed to be. I guess you're not supposed to be selfish. You're not supposed to put yourself first.
Sure.
And I hear a lot of people that are being manipulated or whatever, are somehow rationalizing the roles that they find themselves in.
Yeah.
In a moral way, or
Mhm.
I mean, it's so deep, it's so huge. I mean, it forms your whole reality. Let's face it, right? I mean, it's your
I guess I think what I think of like the messages that society's been giving lately is love yourself, self-love, self-care, right?
and
You
I
know what I'm
guess
talking
yeah.
about?
Well, and when I hear people, the loving yourself, I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of people interpret that as selfishness.
Yes.
To love yourself, to
Yes.
put yourself first,
Yes.
to take care of yourself first and foremost,
Yeah.
and
It's
and-
interesting having gone to school, for what we went to school for, and kind of seeing these ideas that we were introduced to maybe back in grad school then show up in the regular kind
Yeah.
of cultural milieu.
yeah, in
Or
a weird
society.
kind of, yeah.
So like self-care, like that was only a term I heard in school for a
Triggers.
long time.
Triggers
Yeah.
was another
Triggers,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Narcissists.
Yeah, well, I mean, narcissism obviously has been around a long time.
Yeah,
but like
but
triggers, definitely.
That
used to just be a therapy term.
Everybody's a narcissist now. And,
Yeah, I think to a degree.
well, you get what I'm saying.
I'm always saying people are narcissists.
Well, I think we
but-
have become more narcissistic as a
Yeah.
society, but it's definitely a buzzword.
But in school, self-care usually dealt with how paying attention to your own health as a therapist, right? Because you get compassion fatigue, you get vicarious trauma, you get or secondary trauma, whatever you want to call it, from seeing, from interacting with people who are whatever have gone through all this stuff, and you start kind of taking it on yourself. And then a lot of therapists, thank God we don't work in a job where we have to take our notes home with us or anything like that. But I used to do notes when I got home from work.
Yeah.
And so you take your work home with you, literally. And so there was this big emphasis on self-care. Make sure you're whatever, getting to the gym, you're whatever, maybe doing yoga or who knows, eating right, making time for yourself. But it's like it gets out into society, and then it almost turns into, well, I'm going to go on a bender for the weekend. This is it's my self-care. You know what I'm saying? Like, Yeah, or even self-love. I think when I first started hearing about, loving yourself or whatever, it was in the context of learning about shame and trauma, and how trauma it affects your self-worth. You feel like you're basically a piece of shit. And so loving yourself was about seeing yourself as worthy, is not a piece of shit, is a full human being. You're important to, so on and so forth, right? It wasn't about just selfishness and narcissism. But when it hits the culture at large, these things, I don't know.
What's funny is that I think about this in a workplace, and I think about this from a societal standpoint, is that it's a mixed message.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that especially in other cultures, but everything is set up for us to have these expectations to live a sort of oppressive lifestyle. And don't be wrong, I'm not being a big baby about life, but there isn't a whole lot of grace for that. We're supposed to work our asses off. We're supposed to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. We're supposed to, like when I hear people talking, like in the past employers that I worked for, and they were mental health places, and they talk about self-care, but the expectations that they were throwing at me were absolutely ridiculous, absolutely unrealistic, and it was just this spout that never turned off. And so they're like, you just need to, practice some self-care. It's like, hold on. Yeah, how?
When?
You're telling me to do this, but it's not possible. I'm sorry. And so what you're really saying is, shut up.
Right.
I mean,
quit your bitching.
Well, what you need to do is just, not care as much about working on the weekends. And, they always hear things like, you just got to be smarter with your time. And it's like, well, show me how to do that at least. Yeah. But there's not a lot of that. So I guess, we have this in any place, a society that just keeps coming back with more and more demands and less and less resources to do that. And where does that end? Like people talk about, the technology, and we've got all this new technology to make us more efficient, but the workload hasn't gone down.
Yeah.
At least not for
me. And once upon a time, back in, I don't know, the 50s or something, or 30s, 40s, whatever, when technology was, of course, starting to really advance, people would, kind of the people at the time who were, I don't know any exact quotes or anything, but there was a sense of optimism about it.
Yeah.
That, oh my gosh, we're gonna get to go down to like 4-day work weeks eventually, and then maybe even 3-day work weeks, and we're gonna have all this time on our hands to just kind of do whatever we want, whether it's creative endeavors or things we genuinely care about and love. And technology will do all kind of this menial stuff that the repetitive stuff of.
Well, yeah.
But it didn't, of course, happen that way.
No, it didn't happen. And I think about another example would be the two parents going to work. It is becoming the norm, right? Okay, so now
it became the norm a long time ago.
And so it's like, okay, well, you got to practice self-care. Yet society is saying, okay, we're going to create now the expectation where you can't survive unless you have 2 working adults in the home.
Yeah. So isn't that funny? Like, because at the same time, back when I was just talking about, like at that same time, it was the norm to have a single parent.
Yeah.
Or the one parent is goes to work, and the other one stays home with the kids, right? Like that was more the norm, in the 50s and prior to that, and that was also the time where, once again, people were like dreaming of this future where people will have to even work less and less, and not only do they work more, but both partners start, work more.
So yeah, where do you
wild.
find this
Yeah.
place to practice your self-love when you're just surviving?
Well, I think self-love and self-care are a little bit different. I think they're
Well,
they're
okay,
connected.
self-care
You have
seems-
to value yourself to want to care about, to do things to care about yourself, right?
And
But
I think there's always room to improve.
sure.
But I think the message is often overlooking the limitations of some people's
Yeah.
lifestyle and what's necessary for them to do
To
that.
survive.
Oh, you can always make time for these things.
Right.
And it's like, well, dude, I'm a single fucking mom, right? Okay, so yeah, you tell me when I'm gonna get a chance to go into the gym and still try to raise my kids or whatever it is, or even worse, like a single working parent, right? That's not home all the time, getting assistance. Okay, so let's take. I guess that's the thing. I always want to encourage people with consideration to what their limitations are. So what can we do within this? But let's not apply the blame to ourselves that we're not meeting this standard of health and well-being because it's a sickness of society. And instead of changing society, we apply the blame to ourselves.
Yeah, it's a systemic thing.
And so who are the people that put out these messages of self-care and all this other shit? Well, dude, you've probably got the opportunity. You've probably got the means to do it. And I know there's always the exception. You always have super people. Great. Good for you. You're one of the few. Hopefully you do something with that. That's going to change the world with your superpower and your ability to fucking be perfect. But for a lot of people, that's not the case.
That's not the case.
So
we're
really kind of jumping around, but it's good though, because we'll get into this. I think we'll get into it more specifically as we move.
Yeah.
But
anyway, just finally, I just want to kind of end this piece of it on relationships, on relationship with the self. I mean, I do think it is, like I said, I think that self-love, and I see this more, from the conservative side. They criticize that as, oh, well, that's just selfishness. And it's like, no, there's a difference between loving oneself and loving oneself in like a narcissistic, selfish way. Once again, it goes back to shame, and if you feel like you have low self-worth, then that's a problem. You're going to struggle if you have low self-worth. That manifests in all sorts of other problematic ways. And I do think, people, it's an important question, how do you feel about yourself? I mean, I think all of us kind of struggle with shame to a certain extent, right? Just feeling of like either imposter syndrome or just feeling like, you're just less than in some way. Obviously it's changes from person to person, but anyway, it's like you can't care about other. I don't know. I think it's interesting to think about like this in terms of like the Jesus is saying of love your neighbor as yourself. Well, if you don't love yourself, how can you love someone as you love yourself? Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Well, you don't know what love is. You don't know what's
exactly.
And there's a lot of different forms of how people express loyalty, and I think it takes a little digging to uncover what love is, and So, and I use this example for a lot of guys. Like if you're living in a drug lifestyle, I show you love by giving you something to smoke, or that's or. I will get your back when it comes to engaging in some sort of activity that's illegal, or, protect you in some other way. But, a lot of times you got to take a look at who's sending those messages of guilt, and you shouldn't love yourself. You should. I mean, I think there's some well-intentioned people that do that, but a lot of times it's folks that are just manipulating, and it's a boundary issue that people have, and they're playing on people's insecurities and their unmet needs from their childhood. And people, it's a narrative that people buy into. It's like, well, and I mean, this is code that we follow, right? I can't turn my back on somebody who'd been there for me back in '96. Yeah, no, it's so, or somebody who wants somebody to be an expendable labor force.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I think, but it's they cherry pick these people that are lazy and unmotivated or depressed or whatever, and they're certainly out there and say, well, but they're not loving themselves either, are they?
Right.
As somebody who, I mean, truly loves themselves is not going to let themselves turn into a blob of shit and not going to maximize their potential.
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Some people get depressed or whatever, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of knowing what's best for somebody and, putting yourself first in the right way. And when you learn how to love yourself, right, now you know how to love other people properly. And
yes,
and that means saying no. Yeah, so and some people have no point of reference when it comes to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
They've never had anybody in their life who actually loves them, so they don't even know what that is. They're trying to discover that.
Right.
As,
Right.
I've had people tell me the first time I heard about what love was in a book.
Wow.
It was in a book,
Yeah.
right? The first time I experienced any kind of love was any stability, any sense of family was AA. And so, yeah, it's like, where's that? Yeah, if everybody in your life has been a piece of shit,
Yep.
and you've learned to be selfish and look out for yourself, or do whatever you're going to do to try to get your needs met, whether that's healthy or not. I mean, that's what you do.
And so that love of self, so to speak, and your relationship with others are strongly interconnected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. And then your relationship with others and how other people have treated you, and the things that have happened in your life, then you project that out into the rest of the world.
Sure.
And on,
and typically
anybody,
it's rooted in safety a lot of time. But okay, well, we can wrap it up. We'll get into, I think, awareness next time more, like, because we've got this all written out, and maybe we can stay a little more on focused, which I think is great, though. I like the segues because, that's where the good stuff is. Spontaneous kind of, that's like, jazz, like music. It's like, this is happening as it goes.
You got some structure, but then you just kind of...
Yeah. Exploring new ideas, right?
Yep.
I know this shit, but
yeah,
what is there that's yet to be seen? So
All
that's
right.
fun, dude. Okay. Well, hopefully you people that are listening, you don't hate us. And hopefully you don't have expectations for amazing things in the future. This is what is this that I'm doing here? Is this would be a defense sort of thing, feeling uncomfortable, kind of saying self-defeating. Yeah, talk so that
how to wrap up. But
hey, I'm gonna beat myself up first before you get to me. So I'm a piece of shit. Beat you to it. Eat it.
Well, yeah, and you're also setting people up to have low expectations.
Yeah.
If you're going to listen, have low expectations.
Oh, I'm not a salesman.
No, I'm not. I know I'm not. So, right? Yeah, we're the worst people to be trying to...
Hey, dudes. So tune in next time. We're going to have some... I hate
like and subscribe. Smash that like button.
Smash it, man.
Smash it. Press it really hard on your screen. All right.
Everything's got to be really intense, doesn't it?
Everything does.
Therapy on Tap next Tuesday. Chris and Nick talk about sexual abuse. Or whatever.
Yeah. All right.
It's so hard to say.
Until next time.
Yeah. Turn it off, Chris.